Okay, and even though we are short a few people, we can call the meeting to order at 7:06. And Ralph, were you able to, hi Diana, were you able to get a flag so that we could say the pledge to a flag?
Yes, I was actually. So.
That's great. So we're going to try something new and screen share the flag while we say the pledge. That's fantastic, Ralph. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which
it
it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's fantastic, Ralph. Thank you so much. Oops, hang on a second. That just was the live stream delay. Okay, that felt a little more proper than standing up and not having a flag in my office to me. So the third item on our agenda is public comment. Ralph, is there anyone in the webinar to do public comment? Maura had said she didn't get any emailed in advance.
Yeah, we actually have quite a few. So I will run down the list.
Okay.
And
what?
This will make a difference for you too, so your picture pops up. We're going to start with, I know that we have a number of principals on, which I believe are not actually making any public comments, so text me if that's the case. I'd like to start with Eric Niederer.
Hi, board, Dr. Adamowski. I don't think you can see me, only hear me. 36 Pedham Road. I just have a quick comment. I'm a parent and a member of the SGC of the Ponus Ridge School. Ponus Ridge, as everybody knows, was part of the strategic facilities plan to not only build an expansion out for the K through 5, but also 6 through 8 on the STEAM project. There's a focus on science and technology. I recently learned, well, let me back up. When the school improvement was conceptualized and it was broadcast to parent and all stakeholders, it was my understanding that there was going to be a new build out, which is the K through 5, and then a fully renovated old building, which was the middle school, that would then be a state-of-the-art STEAM school. I understand that through the various phases that the budget has not only been reduced, but that the old building, which was supposed to be renovated to new, is now not being renovated to new. And I've gotten that confirmed through a couple of different sources. Very disheartening for a parent of a 6th grader. Part of the reason that I went there, understanding that my child would not necessarily see the full benefit of a newly built out school, and that he would be a little bit disadvantaged being a student there during the build out, but also being a conscientious citizen and looking towards the future of a fully renovated and expanded new school, state of the art. We went there, and that's also our home school. So we're very disheartened that it's not going to be renovated to new. Also, my understanding is that there's $380,000 approximately that is left over. And when I mean left over, that's on the reduced budget that now has the potential to be basically reverted back to the city. My understanding is that in the old building, the middle school, that there's not going to be new furniture, and in fact there's going to be no new furniture for the science department or the science wing, which is a little ironic since it's a STEAM school with the concentration in part on science and technology. The floors on the 2nd floor are not going to be redone. The bathrooms, both girls and boys, are not going to be redone. I know a number of boys in various houses, because there's 3 houses in the middle school, Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. The boys won't go to the bathroom. They come home constipated because they cannot go to the bathroom. The doors don't shut.
That's 30 seconds, sorry.
I'm sorry?
You have 30 seconds left, I'm sorry.
There's not going to be new furniture. The flooring's not going to be redone. So it's very disheartening that it is not going to be built out as new, as promised and sold to the stakeholders. There's not going to be furniture for the science department, and even the 380,000 may get reverted back to the city. So I'll be raising that with the city council as well. But I just wanted to express my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Godfrey, did Godfrey come in the meeting?
Yes.
It is here.
Did you want to keep time for the next one? I don't mind doing it, but it's up to you.
I've got it, Sarah, if you need me to.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Ralph.
No problem. So the next person is Kim Hagermiller.
Good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Kim Hagermiller, and I am the co-chair of the School Governance Council at Brookside Elementary. I very much thank you for this opportunity to address you. The Brookside SGC urges you to appoint Ms. Christina Guerra to the position of principal for Brookside. We received and reviewed 40 applications for this position. We devoted a great deal of time and attention. We had a very fine pool of talent, but we feel Ms. Guerra stood out right from the beginning. After conducting our interviews, the committee was nearly unanimous in our choice of Ms. Guerra, and we certainly arrived at 100% amicable consensus. We feel she has the experience, knowledge, talent, and enthusiasm that we are looking for. She also has the benefit of being already employed in district and familiar with the Norwalk public school system. I would also like to add that the assistance we received from Joe Rodriguez and Yolanda Evangelista Wynn from the talent office during this process was invaluable, and we are very much in their debt. On behalf of the Brookside SGC, I would also like to thank all the board members for all of the time and the work you put in, and for your commitment to our school system. Again, Ms. Christina Guerra has our very strong support for the position of principal at Brookside. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. Ralph,
Great.
who's next?
Thank you. So our next speaker is Jacqueline Victoria. I believe Jacqueline may not want to speak then. Sorry, there's a few that we're going to have to go through. Jill Dunn. Okay. Gina Pisana. Okay. Lori Gardella. Our next on the list is Mike Chuba.
Yeah, hi there. This is Mike Chuba, 32 Marlborough Road, Norwalk. I've got a son, Kevin, who's a junior at Norwalk High. And there's discussion about the grading policy and how we're going to grade the high school students for their performance this year. And my understanding is there is some discussion about using pass-fail for external transcripts. And I'm really concerned about how that's going to affect his applications for colleges next year. My son is an outstanding student, straight A student through all of high school, as well as middle school. He's got a heavy AP course load. And I just think that if all the kids are going to get is a pass-fail distinction for their junior year, it's not going to stack up real well for the kind of top-tier colleges that he's aspiring to apply to. So I'd really like to see you take the approach that my son who's in college, what the college took, which is to give the students themselves individually the opportunity to decide whether they want a pass-fail grade or whether they want a the actual letter grade that they've earned through the work that they've done over the course of the year. So again, I don't know exactly what the board is thinking in terms of final grades and how you're going to handle it, but I really think that a pass-fail grading system is really going to hurt the top tier kids. And, you know, it's great for the Norwalk public school system when our kids get to get into the top tier schools, whether it's Ivy or near Ivy or some of the other schools like Notre Dame and BC and Stanford, et cetera. And I hate to see us put those kids at a disadvantage. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thanks. Ralph, who do we have next?
Robin de Blasio. Robin, you're unmuted. Okay, next is Susan Remsen.
Hi there. My name is Susan Remsen. I live at 18 Tanglewood Lane. I have a 10th grader at Norwalk High, and I also teach at Norwalk High. And I agree with Mr. Chuba in that I feel like the kids should have the option of choosing pass or fail, or a grade. I know that I have spent endless hours grading their work that got turned in. And it just doesn't feel fair that they don't get the credit they deserve for the amount of effort they put in. And I understand protecting the kids who are disadvantaged, don't have Wi-Fi or having difficulties, or I understand all of that. I just would really like to see a consideration of having that as an option and not as a must. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph, who's next up? Ralph?
Yes, no, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm also trying to get Heidi into the meeting
Oh,
at the
no
same
worries.
time. So Ann D'Adamo.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Hello. Ann D'Adamo. My address is 18 Tally Drive in Norwalk. I am the parent of a junior at Center for Global Studies. Again, I echo both Mr. Chuba and Ms. Remsen's comments about having the opportunity for students to either choose to take the traditional letter grade or to have the option of choosing pass-fail. I strongly urge you to reconsider your stance on this for high school students and allow them to receive this grade that they worked so hard to earn. While I understand the pass with distinction option would be offered for high-performing students, unless that's a designation that's rolled out nationwide, it fails to adequately represent the student's achievement, especially when these students, like my son, is in AP, IB, and all honors level classes. Furthermore, unless all students across the US, or at least in Connecticut, are assessed similarly, our Norwalk students will be at a disadvantage when competing for college placement. I'm sure you're doing your due diligence with our neighbors in Fairfield County, checking out other universities, both in and out of state, to understand what they're offering and making an informed decision. However, these young adults have worked tremendously hard despite challenges with distance learning and deserve to reap the fruits of their labor. While I applaud your efforts and empathize with those children who've had challenges with distance learning, that doesn't mean that those children who haven't should be penalized. I thank you for your time and appreciate your consideration.
thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Christina Ray. Hello, Christina. I guess that's okay. Our next speaker is Jean Carrillo. Okay, our next speaker is Carrie Rice. Our next potential speaker is Megan Hopkins. Our next potential speaker is Melissa Dino.
I'm holding myself back from saying Bueller, and I haven't been able to stop myself this time.
Our next speaker is Michelle Propesi. Okay. And we have two more, excuse me, three more. Pavlina Shrell.
Can I say here? I'm here.
Oh,
Yes,
hi.
you're there. Yes.
Oh, hi. My name is Michelle Perpersi, and I live at 1 Rolling Lane. And I just wanted to also echo what the other people were saying about the grades. You know, as a parent, my children get up every morning and are engaged in their studies. Even my son, who's a senior and an athlete that watched his senior lacrosse season disappear, he still managed to keep being the solid student he has been for the last 4 years. They have both done work because that's the work ethic that has been instilled in them. We try not to overly stress about grades, but we have an understanding of the importance of doing your best. The payoff, as much as we want to debate it, is a good grade. These good grades have helped earn my son an academic scholarship to college. My 10th grade daughter has seen this and strives to do the same in the hopes that she will also achieve a scholarship. As a parent, I have seen my children struggle, as I realize many have, with losing out on so many positives that come with high school. But we have taught them to be resilient. To change the grade policy this close to the end of the school year is sending a message to them that their ability to be resilient and achieve did not matter. It sends the message that hard work is not rewarded. And to me, it has the same mentality as everyone gets a trophy. Besides being a parent, I'm also a school counselor and strongly believe that this will impact college admissions. I know that the argument many districts are doing the same, especially in neighboring towns or perhaps all over Connecticut. But what happens if students want to go to schools outside of Connecticut or a private school in Connecticut? They're competing with students from all over the country that do not have a pass-fail option or policy. How are colleges going to determine what a P represents? Juniors are not going to have the ability to take SATs or ACTs several times before the college applications are due. They may not even have the opportunity in the fall. Or you may argue that colleges are going to be test optional. But what do you think they're going to base their decisions on? The transcript. But our students will have a P on their transcripts. How do you think colleges are going to recalculate GPAs with Ps? Right now, colleges may be saying that they understand that students have a different look to their transcript, but
30
come the
seconds.
fall, excuse me?
I'm sorry, 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So basically, as a counselor and as a parent, I'm very empathetic that there are students that are struggling, but I also want what's best for all of our students. And I think as a counselor and as a parent, students should have the option for determining how their grade will appear on their transcript. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Andrew Todd. Andrew, if you can just unmute yourself.
Good evening. Andrew Todd, 19 Friendly Road down in Norwalk. I'm sure, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll make it brief because I'm sure the board has gotten a few emails over the last 24 hours and some board members have seen my posts on Facebook. Very simply put, there is no harm, no shame, no foul in giving these kids at least an option to accept the letter grade they rightfully earned, or if they don't, they can go with the pass-fail grade. Westport's doing it, New Canaan's doing it, and I think the city of New York is doing it. It's really simple. The kids worked extremely hard. Both my children, my sixth grader said at the beginning of distance learning, it was real easy. And then a couple of weeks later, oh my God, it got real hard. And he persevered. My 10th grader had some issues beginning of the semester, but he really buckled down and really did some hard work. He's still doing it, and we'll make sure he does it until the end. These kids are working hard. Their lives were turned upside down like everybody else's. They embraced the distance learning, which, just FYI, I think the district has done a wonderful job with this. I've spoken to a number of teachers. I think it was done really well as opposed to other places around the country and around the state of Connecticut. But they worked, they deserve it, they earned it. Let's do the right thing for them. Give them at least the option, default to the letter grade, or let it go back to for them to take a pass-fail. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on the list, Ralph?
Yes, we have potentially 3 more. Avery Dudek.
Oh, no, I'm not speaking.
Oh,
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
it startles me every time.
Bridget Elliott. I guess so. And the last one on our list of attendees are Susan Lanzarato.
Hi, this is Susan Lanzarato. I live at 9 Daphne Drive. I just want to reiterate what Mike Chuba, Michelle Property, Susan Remsen, and Drew Todd all said. I've sent emails to all of you on the board, so you probably have all seen them. And if you haven't, they're in your inboxes. But I too feel that our kids have earned these grades.
Lazaretto?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry, Susan. I'm sorry. Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I reiterate, I don't know how much you heard, but I reiterate all of the previous speakers in terms of the grades. These children have earned these grades, and I feel like to take that away from them at this point is really a disservice to them. But let's look beyond that. It's really about the college application process. I feel like we are doing our students a huge disservice if we give them a pass-fail as opposed to a letter grade. I would reiterate exactly what Michelle said, but I don't need to go on and on because I think you've heard all the arguments. But I just ask that you really consider that our kids, especially some of these kids that are taking AP courses and maybe got an A- and not an A, their grade will look the same as somebody that gets a D in a different class, and that's just not right. And from a college perspective, today when they see pass-fail, they do not look at that as an A or B. They look at it as more of a C or D, and that may change over time. But I think it's really a disservice to our kids. It puts them at just a huge disadvantage going forward to their future. So please reconsider that and give them the option to take the letter grade. Thank you.
Thanks.
And one last one, potentially, Jean Carrillo.
Oh, no, I didn't. I was just here to listen. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Great.
Great.
Okay, so does that conclude our potential public commenters?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we can move on to agenda item 4, which starts with the superintendent's report and a COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. So I have 4 items that I would like to talk with you about tonight. The first is a confirmation that we will be completing the school year on June 9th, and we will be completing it through distance learning. In the interim of this effort, we were able to obtain funding from the city of Norwalk to purchase laptop computers and tablets for our K-2 students. So at the time, excuse me, just at the time of our, at the time that distance learning was initiated, we were not one of the districts that had a one-on-one ratio of devices to students. However, we will begin summer school and the school year in the next school year on that basis. So as we look back at the distance learning effort, the fact that we will be on a one-to-one basis will eliminate the needs for the learning packets and will increase the level of synchronous learning should the district have to go out again a second time. So we will wrap up on June 9th officially for the school year. That is the same date that we were scheduled to end school in the regular calendar. And now we are planning for summer school. So we're planning for a K-12 summer school, which will include the Ingenuity Credit Recovery Summer School at the high school level. We're planning K through 8 in the model that we have developed over the last few years. And we are planning for ESY, extended school year. And we have several hundred students with special needs who are eligible through their IEPs for that. We anticipate there will be a great demand from parents for summer school. So in addition to those students who are normally eligible, we are going to provide a COVID-19 opt-in, opt-out process. We are expecting it to be heavily skewed toward the opt-in. And again, are gearing up and planning around that. The governor has cleared school districts to open for summer school on July 6th. However, I'm sure you can imagine this is inherent with many challenges in terms of prevention. We are planning to give parents the option of synchronous learning at home as opposed to coming in to summer school. That will be a parental choice. It may also be it also may be necessary to limit transportation to required transportation. That is transportation required by law or state regulation, and that's K3 and ESY. And it may be that we are not able to transport grades 4 through 12. And that is simply due to the capacity of a bus. So, you know, if a student is sitting one to a seat, every other seat, a 60 passenger bus now has the capacity of 15 students. But again, these are issues we're looking at now and exploring, and we will obviously do as much as we possibly can. Students will likely come to school in small groups, groups of 10. There will be appropriate PPEs, there will be hand washing, and it is likely that lunch will either be handled in the classroom or students will take their lunch home with them. But in any event, this will be a valuable experience and preparation toward opening in terms of the rest of the school year. So third, I'm really pleased tonight to be able to announce graduation and graduation dates. So we are going to be using the drive-in style mode of graduation. Many board members are aware that our high school administrators spent a great deal of time several weeks ago talking to seniors, polling seniors, getting their views on the kind of graduation that they wanted, and discussing options with them. There was very little support for a virtual graduation, which many districts throughout our state and country are doing. The virtual graduation would have taken place on the normal graduation date in June. There was also the option considered of having students come back in the fall for graduation. That was not well received either. I think, you know, there was some very astute thinking on the part of our students, which said, you know, this is a closure to an experience. And if the other door is already open and you're in college, this is not, to come back for it does not have the similar effect. They wanted, even if it was on a limited basis, to be able to see their fellow graduates and participate in some type of a ceremony with them. So we're going to use the drive-in style graduation. which means that families will attend in cars. The graduates will get out of the car to come up and get their diploma. There will be speakers. Obviously, the speaker will be on the stage pretty much by themselves. But all the things that would normally occur on a graduation will occur at an appropriate distance with both families and students in their cars. We are in the process of working with a company that does this, and details will be generated soon. However, what I can announce tonight are the dates. So let me start with the two academies. P-TECH, which will be graduating 60 students, will graduate on July 25th at 9 a.m. on the Norwalk High School field. Their rain date is August 1st. CGS with 45 graduates will graduate on August 1st. This is a Sunday, but at the request of CGS at 9 a.m. on the Brian McMahon High School field. The rain date is August 2nd. Brian McMahon High School with approximately 400 graduates will graduate on August 4th at Calf Pasture Beach at 9 a.m. And there will be accommodation and parking for 400 cars at that time. By order of the mayor, who has been extremely cooperative in this matter, the Calf Pasture Beach Park will close for 4 hours between 8 and 11. That will allow an hour to get in, an hour ceremony, and an hour to get the cars out. Norwalk High School, which with approximately 380 graduates, the rain date for Brian McMahon will be August 6th. Norwalk High School will graduate on August 3rd at 9 a.m. At Calf Pasture Beach, and the rain date is August 5th. This will be announced in terms of details to parents on Friday. It'll be announced in our own newsletter, but also our schools are preparing some more detailed instruction to seniors and the family of seniors. Right now, we just want everyone to hold the dates. This is, by the way, one of the options that has been sanctioned by the Connecticut State Department of Education, as long as it occurs after July 1st. So with the last week of July, first week in August, we feel pretty safe doing this. I want to thank three people in addition to our own administrators and teachers who have been working on this. Chief Kaholic has made a tremendous commitment in terms of the police department, which will be handling the cars in and the cars out. Deanna D'Amore, our health director, who has continued to advise us on this issue, and Mayor Harry Rilling, in particular Mayor Harry Rilling, who has agreed to take the unprecedented step of closing the park, closing the beach on those 2 mornings for our graduation. So thanks to everyone. I think that the amount of thought and planning that has gone into this is going to hopefully provide our students with an experience that would be far better than any other option. And also one that under the circumstances will create a better closure to the school year and launch them into their next chapter. Finally, the last item
Can I
want.
I'm sorry, can I just oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
I just had a question, like a procedural question, actually. And I am so glad that there's going to actually be able to be a ceremonial commemoration for this class, because it's been a really difficult, unprecedented time for everyone. Sorry, my kids are yelling in the other room. What do we have provisions for families that may not have a car?
We will. We do not at the moment, but we will. That's one of the areas that we're working on.
Okay.
It's our
and then my
intention
other thought.
to do that.
Sure, of course. And then my other thought, which is might seem a little silly, but is actually sort of a logistical point, considering the length of the ceremony, because people probably will not have anywhere to be able to use the restroom, is just a thought that I've been having as people have been going back to work, and my husband works in the city and has to drive around the entire time he's working and not get out of his car. So there has to be a limit on the time for this sort of, challenge. Heidi, what were you going to say?
Yeah, if I can just also add in, I think it's fantastic. I think our seniors will be very, very, very happy. Thing though, since we're having so many different dates and graduations, can we post this on our website, just the logistics, where it's going to happen, as well as the dates and times?
We will have it on the website. We'll have it in newsletters. We'll have it in communications, homes to parents, but absolutely it will be on the website and any other way we can publicize that.
Dr. Adamowski, this is Erica speaking. For families that have parents that are separated, will they be allowed to drive in with 2 cars?
That's a very good question. We'll have to work that out. We are working with the police in terms of, how many cars can be accommodated. That's a very good question. And thank you for thinking of that. We'll add that to our list of problems to solve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to continue if that's okay. Finally, the last item involves the recommendation from the State Department of Education that each school district in Connecticut form a school opening task force. This task force would be the body that would plan and ensure the proper precautions for the resumption of school at the end of August, beginning of September. I'd like us to be one of the first to establish that. I believe there's one other district in Fairfield County that has announced it. But this is something that I have been in discussions with your new superintendent about. And I think we have a pretty good plan to propose. The school opening task force would perform its work for approximately 9 weeks between June 16th and August 15th. We will do this in a way that the group is co-chaired by the superintendent and Frank Costanzo in his operations capacity. So I will start off with Frank as co-chairs on July 1. Alex will take over that role. There are a number of important people that we will need to involve and some optional. So what I'm proposing is that we involve the Chief Academic Officer, the Chief of Digital Learning, the Special Education Chief, one comprehensive high school principal, one academy principal, one middle school principal, one elementary principal, our Director of Health Services and Nursing Supervisor, the Norwalk Health Director, our School Safety Director, a police liaison, and a board liaison. In addition, those are kind of the required members. In addition, I would like to invite 3 teachers to participate who are nominated by the NFT, 2 support staff, and 3 parents who would be nominated by the members of the Board of Education. And so as we work on forming this over the next week or 2, I would like the board to consider appointing a liaison, a member of the board who would serve on this group. Their responsibility would be to report back on the work of the school opening task force on a regular basis. And I also would like to solicit nominations from every member of the board for parents who they feel may be able to serve on this. A parent with particular expertise, in facilities or maybe doing similar work certainly would be an asset, but that is not a requirement. We're basically looking for people who have good judgment and would be reflective of the views of the majority of people in our community. And so your role as a board member would be to have a conversation with the individual first, ascertain that they would be willing to serve, and then you would submit the nomination, and we will try to handle that in a way that's representative of the three levels of the school district. So that will be something that we will turn our attention to shortly. And that and the planning for summer school will really be the next big challenges that we will focus on, in addition, of course, to graduation. So, I think I should close just by thanking all the many staff members that have been involved in this, whether it's the teachers performing distance learning in various ways from home, our administrators who we meet with weekly, who will be chairing the skeleton crews that will be packing up student belongings and distributing laptops and their books and so on, to the people who will be serving on the task force, our union leaders who have collaborated in this effort, and all the many people at the high school, administrators and teachers, who have played a role in getting us to this point in graduation, and will be responsible for actually implementing this and carrying it out. Thank you all for a great team effort, and we are not through the gauntlet yet, but we're at least halfway there at this point successfully. And I think it's fair to say that based upon the performance of our staff, we are certainly one of the districts that have had a distinguished experience with distance learning and handling this crisis to the best interests of our students.
For sure.
That's my report.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I did want to say, I absolutely echo your thanks to you and to everyone who's been doing this work, teachers and administrators and everybody, families, students. And I wanted to say, as we move forward into these next two phases, I know that there's a tremendous amount of anxiety surrounding, practical logistical questions. And so as these decisions are being made, I think it probably would be a good idea to just have like a frequently asked questions or questions you may have, very short bullets, shareable things that we can say, how can I get a mask if I need one? Will this be required? What, that kind of thing, as those questions are answered. And I know many of them are not answered right now, but I think the more succinct and immediate we can be with our information, the more it will help people be reassured moving forward.
Good point. We'll make a point to put some things in a question and format answer as we develop answers.
For sure.
I agree. Sarah, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just Dr. Adamowski, you mentioned as part of the plans for summer school, having PPE available for students, and presumably that may be part of the plan for the fall as well. I wonder if any of the planning is going to involve testing in school for virus testing, whether that's going to be done in conjunction with city or the state or not, or if you know.
Okay, so two very good questions. In both cases, we are following advisements from the State Department of Education as well as our own health director. I may have given you the misimpression on PPEs. At this point, PPE is recommended for staff, for all staff, but not students, and particularly young students, because the feeling is that this encourages them to touch their face. There is also an emerging consensus that young children are in the best situation in terms of their immune capacity, right? So, I think the focus is on protection of anyone who is older. And I'm not sure where high school students will fall in this, but we will certainly examine that. And again, these are the kinds of directions that Deanna Diamori has been providing to us as we go along. And Colin, I'm sorry, there was another part of your question that I'm forgetting.
I was just curious if you know, either at the state or city level, if any of the reopening plans involved testing, virus testing for children.
Yes, we have explored temperature testing on the way in. That is not being recommended. I'm not sure this is going to be recommended for children. It may be recommended for staff. That is one of the testing is one of the things we're exploring. We're also exploring the general notion of, as opposed to daily testing, of any staff being tested before they return to work. There may be some testing in the mix. Thank you. Those are great questions.
Thank you.
Dr. Adamowski, it's Erica speaking again. As
Yes.
you continue this conversation, if you could just keep in mind and consult with your vet with regard to our special needs children and masks being worn. And I know that you're saying that right now that's not the case, but many of our children have sensory issues, and the masks need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, so we'll look at that. I know that there are plans. We actually had a discussion regarding summer school today. We have another meeting scheduled tomorrow for more in-depth planning. And both Brenda Myers and Yvette have developed proposals for summer school, which we've been able to review and refine that define some of this. I know one of the issues that Yvette is addressing is in the assessment of children with special needs by psychologists or speech therapists. And I know they will be using and have ordered the plastic guards, which will be installed in front of desks for that purpose. So you're right. This is a more complicated issue and needs to be dealt with individually for some students. And this is not a one size fits all, especially for the operation of ESY.
Well, thank you for the forward thinking for those students
Yep.
who cannot wear the masks.
Sarah?
Yeah.
So when we think about how we're going to spend our CARES money, we know that there are 4 categories that we can use it for: technology, safety of students and staff, learning loss, and I don't have the last one right at this moment, but I've been reading about what other districts are investing in, both here in Connecticut and around the globe. I saw New Haven has bought these fogging desanitizers that are not chemical, but are actually some other science that I haven't studied yet. And in Korea, they have hand washing stations at the entrance of the school, and they're disinfecting the bottom of children's shoes. As we think about what we want to do, I think we have a responsibility to our community that we put safety first in our planning. And then, of course, recovering the learning loss. The other thing that I am hearing from all sectors is the incredible trauma that students are going through, but also that teachers are absorbing by supporting them, that there's a lot of desperate situations, and we may need to invest in a surge of mental health support for our students as we deal with reentry. So I hope that we can prioritize these things along with the academics that, of course, we want to enhance.
So just to clarify, in answer to your question, the four areas are technology, school opening expenses, summer school, which is the one you admitted, and gap closing. And gap closing is in two areas, academic and SEL as well. Now, we were very fortunate to have the support of the city on the technology issue. The goal that every district in the country is trying to get to is a one-on-one student to device ratio. So we will have accomplished that. We may have some school opening expenses that will have to come out of the CARES Act. We're working with the city on that now. We're not sure that things like the PPEs, you know, those plastic guards I mentioned, other kinds of things, additional busing expense, for example, you know, would be covered by any of the areas that would be reimbursable to the city. And there may be some of those we would have to pick up ourselves. We are going to need to use a good portion of the CARES Act for summer school, particularly at the middle school level, and to accommodate any increase in students opting in, whether they're opting in at home or at school. And then we are currently soliciting proposals from principals at the school level relative to their assessment of their needs relative to academic and social and emotional gap closing. So we should have more information on that, but those are the areas. You know, right now we're making a commitment to summer school as we plan it. But again, as the work of the school opening task force winds on, we may have other expenses there. And we want to get, you know, the view of schools regarding the needs of their students when they return as well. So all of those will be eligible. There will not be enough money to address them all fully, but we would have to make some priorities and achieve some balance among those areas. I would, with the exception of technology, I would think that we will have to do some things in the other three areas. But thank you for that question.
Okay. I think this has been a good discussion about the first chunk of the agenda, and we do have some actions to get through and reports, and then we also have an executive session at the end. So if nobody has any further discussion about that, I'd like to move on to approval of the consent calendar. Does anybody have anything else to say, or could so moved? Can I get a second, please? Diana, thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Is that a no discussion? I still can't see everybody. That's okay. Very well. All in favor of approval of the consent calendar, including both items 2A and 2B, approval of personnel and approval of budget transfers? Aye.
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 Sounds unanimous. Any opposed? Okay.
Does the city still want us to do votes by roll call? That was
I think it was just a voice vote was okay. Any no nays and no abstentions, right? Okay, fantastic. We can move to action number 3, which is appointment of the principal at Brookside Elementary School. May I have a motion?
So moved.
I would like to second that one. Second. Is there any discussion? I was very pleased to hear at the robust process that the Governance Council went through and how strongly they felt their agency had been executed in terms of making this choice. So that was great to hear. Any other discussion?
I think the only sadness I hear is from I was just going to say that the only sadness that I'm hearing from the community is from the Nathan Hale school community. That's very sad to lose her.
Sure.
So she should be proud of the relationship she's built there. And I'm sure that they're all very happy for her that she has this new opportunity.
For sure. Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Godfrey, was that a late aye? Any abstentions? Any opposed?
I'm stopping the
Okay,
video now.
That's unanimous also.
Madam Chair,
yes.
I think Ms. Guerrera is here. And as it's our custom, would like to say a few words.
Sure, of course. I can't see her though. Are you here? Oh.
Yeah, she should video. Where is she?
Hey, Christina, you can turn your video too.
Oh, sure.
Hi.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. I am very honored. I feel very grateful for this opportunity. I really am just eager to begin meeting the staff, the families, and most importantly, those cute little Brookside Barracudas. From the bottom of my heart, I can't thank the School Governance Council enough for choosing me as the leader and for their support going forward for the important work that we have ahead. And to my new Brookside family, I just want to say that I can't wait to hit the ground running with them, alongside them in July, and to just get this family started. So thank you all, and be well.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Okie doke. Yes, you're getting a virtual round of applause. It's a little quieter and a little asynchronous, but we're very
Thank
happy.
you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Okay, so now we have action number 4, which is our first read of the emergency closure remote learning policy. And I know, Heidi, that you had planned to talk to Dr. Myers to see if she wanted to speak, or would you like to speak about this?
Yeah, you know what I'll do? I'm sorry, my video is acting up, so I'll speak now and see if I can get that working. But can you hear me okay? Okay. I will switch it over to Dr. Myers in a moment. I just want to give you a little bit of background before I switch it over. You know, during our last special meeting, we had 4 meetings regarding this policy. We discussed at length the emergency closure / remote learning policy. It's 6172.6, and it's specific to the COVID-19 crisis. At our last meeting, we had some revisions, recommendations by our attorney, Tom Mooney, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with, who we've used over the years from Shipman and Goodwin. We were looking mostly at sustainability as we moved through this policy. In addition, we had substantial input, thoughts, suggestions, behind the scenes work. I wanted to mention that as well. And also initially we looked at K policy, as well as New Canaan, which was a very sparse policy, but gave us some insight as well. Canton, as well as Portland, Connecticut. So we looked at all of those different policies and worked on crafting our own. With an extensive amount of work within the policy committee, as well as Frank, Yvette, and Brenda. So it was a cohesive group throughout all 4 meetings. Everybody had input and thorough discussions throughout. And I think one of the main goals of this policy was to ensure that we take into consideration access as well as equity during this emergency closure, in addition to motivate as well as engage our students. So I just wanted to again to give you some color, a little bit of background before we discuss it further. So I will have Dr. Myers or even Dr. Costanzo elaborate further regarding this emergency COVID-19 policy.
Thank you, Heidi. I'll say a couple of brief words, and then I'll actually ask Yvette to come on after me, and then Brenda Myers will complete the presentation with some comments about grading. So as Heidi stated, Policy Committee has been at work on this policy for several weeks. Yvette, Brenda, and myself among the senior managers that have been involved. The spirit of this policy is to support all students key language in this policy includes the implementation of synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities for students. It aims to ensure rigorous learning despite it being remote, and looks to provide about the equivalent student workload that students would receive if they were in a regular school. Explains that courses are taught by certified teachers, that the district will make all reasonable efforts to provide learning materials and learning devices that are in accordance with IEPs and 504 plans. There is also a piece in this policy related to student privacy and confidentiality. It outlines a grading procedure, which we're all knowledgeable about, and Brenda Myers will speak to momentarily. I think that this policy will prepare us for a future closure, should that be the case at some point in the future next year. And I also want everyone on the board to know that there is built-in language in this policy in the event that we operate at a reduced student capacity. So we have built-in language into this policy. So if we are operating at 50% in-person learning or less, this policy can serve as a framework for the district moving forward. And with those broad comments, I'll now turn to Yvette, who can speak more specifically about specialized learning. Yvette?
Thank you, Frank. Good evening, board members. The policy committee worked hard to assure a universal design paradigm for its policy. Specifically, we followed the requirements and recommendations in federal requirements when we are submitting grants. And those are two. One is that all materials, devices, and platforms be accessible, and that accessibility is provided to students with IEPs or 504 plans at the same time as materials, devices, and platforms are made available to all students. So that is the accessibility issue. And I want to congratulate the committee for looking at this so specifically to assure equal access. That's basically the issues.
Thank you so much, Yvette.
Good evening. This is Brenda Myers. Very nice to see everyone this evening. And I appreciate so much the policy committee's work on this. All of the administrators across the district and our teachers have been working on this and really looking at the issues of fair and equitable grading from the day that we needed to respond to the COVID pandemic. Very clearly, what we know is that grading is an institutional piece of what we do, and it has many tentacles. It helps to provide feedback, to inform learning and progress. We use it to determine student promotion to the next grade. It's foundational for determining intervention and additional support, like recommending summer academy. We use it to recommend course selection for students for the following year. We use grading to issue transcripts to colleges, and most importantly for the Board of Education, it is your legal responsibility based on grading to verify that students have met all of the requirements necessary for graduation. So we take this charge very seriously. We know that we want to be consistent. I think Heidi said it best. We balanced access and equity with motivation and engagement. And for every student, there are many, many variables, and there are many different pathways to success for our students during this difficult time. In this recommendation, what we were very solid about is that all students in each grade level, we would maintain current grade reporting, progress reporting, report cards, and we would ensure that parents could access that information in a virtual environment. We would also ensure that all grading practices would align with students' individual plans for 504 and IEPs. We've used the best research practices on a daily basis to drive our instruction for all students, and using processes of feedback, revision, and support for students so that they can continue their learning journey. I've talked to many parents today about some questions about this policy, and I appreciate the voice and the concerns that we've heard. I want to kind of clarify a couple of points that may be confusion in the grading policy. The first one is that we have adopted in this policy, we are recommending the theory of what's called grade or standard bracing. It's very important to this policy. What we know about our children, we know best from the time we were together. We've worked really hard in a distance learning environment, but there is no substitution for evaluating children when you are face-to-face, working with them every day, and when you can look them in the eye and understand what their needs are. And so in a bracing environment, what we've done is we've looked at the data that we had on that child that was collected during live instruction. So let's talk about the elementary level. They completed 2 trimesters and were just issuing report cards when we had to go out for the COVID pandemic. That data is called standards bracing. Where that child was is where we would expect the child to be working at, or showing progress and improving. So when parents get the final report card for the year, you'll see that the teachers have said, this is where the child was. Either they stay the same or they move forward in a standards based environment and a standards based report card. So they're going to be using that. What we also are working with the principals on, obviously in that report card, we've been working on literacy and mathematics, and there are some areas on the report card that are a little harder to evaluate in this virtual environment. And if there's any area there that would be denoted with an X, as it has been done before, that area could not be reported on in the 3rd trimester. So report cards will be going home to parents. And part of this policy is to agree with the idea that we will standards brace, that we will accelerate what we knew about students and use that for the basis of our end of year reporting. Each one of those report cards also includes the recommendation for promotion and whether or not there is a recommendation for summer academy.
Do you mind if I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Thank you, Sarah.
I just wanted to say, to make like a quick summary, because I know there's a tremendous amount of anxiety for some parents about grading. And so just as like a distillation, it is possible for a high achieving student to do better, but not worse.
Absolutely.
So I feel
Absolutely.
like that should hopefully be reassuring to parents who are concerned that their child's achievement won't be recognized, that if the child is continuing to achieve, that will be reflected.
You know, we recognize some of the limitations of a distance learning environment. We're making adjustments. Technology is an issue. We have these pieces. Teachers have worked hard, students have worked hard, and we want to keep engaging them in their learning. But this is not a place where we want to punish or penalize students, right? So we want to take what do we know best about this child and use that to brace our understanding for the end of year evaluation. I'm going to move, and one of the things in this policy is we were very careful to look at what the current practices were at each age and stage of our district. So elementary is different than middle school. So we moved over to middle school and we looked at what would be the reporting system for middle school. And in middle school and high school, what we're recommending in this policy is grade bracing. Grade bracing is being used across the country and has been used previously, so we understand how it works. And for middle school students, what we're acknowledging is we have what's called a semester 1 grade. Say I was taking 8th grade mathematics, I have my grade for the semester time frame. We calculate that S1 and that becomes your braced grade. Now students had some more in-class instruction and then they went out for COVID. And then they continued in distance learning. The average of the entire year is their year-end average. Students in grade bracing will get the higher of those two. So we compare the mid-semester of how a student was doing. We compare the end of year and then the student's final grade. And just to remember, all middle school students will be awarded final grades. Those grades are posted and available within PowerSchool, and students will get report cards. So in the middle school, really the focus has been on looking at our assessment practice, increasing the amount of feedback and revision, and then giving students the opportunity to have their grade braced based on the data that we knew about that child. Sarah, it was helpful when you play back the tape.
Oh, so I think playing back this tape again is acknowledging that you are very thoughtful in making sure that children are able to do better, but not worse, that we're not out to penalize anybody. I think another thing that I wanted to say that is actually not playing back the tape for you, and so I apologize, this is just an interjection on my part, but not all students had the same access to the remote learning opportunities that we provided really at all. And we've been working very hard to make it equitably accessible. But I think it's important for everyone to remember that that the equity work that you've done in this policy is supremely important, that you know, that it wasn't a level playing field through no fault of anyone's. So that's my interjection. I apologize. And to go back to playing back the tape.
Yeah. And I think that's a point that Heidi brought out initially in the policy committee revisited with us, right? And we keep coming back to access and equity, and then balancing that with student motivation and engagement. I mean, no one recommended saying to students, grades don't matter, right? There is an evaluation, there's feedback on your work, it does matter. And your grade will continue to improve as you show that evidence in your learning.
For sure. And so to also play back and bullet and clarify, grades will be available for children to see and get feedback on the work that they have done, and for their families to see and get feedback on the work that their children have done in PowerSchool.
So Brenda, can you just clarify for those that are concerned about college transcripts?
So let me move in to the high school model, right?
Yeah,
so we went through elementary and middle school. And for both of those, these are decisions of what is the grade? Is the child being promoted? You know, what will they take summer school? So K through 8, we use our grading to make those recommendations. And so that is built into the policy. In high school, we have a couple of different variables because the age and stage of high school students. So we looked at, when we look at grade reporting for high school, each student is taking a course, and we did make some modifications. We are not offering the final cumulative exams. So what we did is we are using grade bracing at the high school to, again, calculate their grade for the year. We take the first 10 weeks and the midterm, that creates a mid-year average, S1, semester 1. They then continued in instruction, third 10 weeks, fourth 10 weeks, and that creates cumulative, an average, which is year 1, and we compare. So every student in our high school enrolled in every course has been working with their teacher to get feedback, to continue to improve their progress, and to continue to improve their grade from the midpoint going forward. And that final grade, those grades are all available in PowerSchool, and that final grade will be their grade for the course that they'll have. In our board policy, we have a GPA calculation. GPAs are critical, right? So in middle school and in high school, we calculate the GPA and we weight certain classes. So when students get a higher grade in a more difficult class, that's built into the GPA. We have not made any changes to that calculation of GPA. We will be recording that GPA for each year and cumulatively on the transcript. And there will be evidence of the students' individual grades within that GPA and maintaining the weighting for the more difficult courses. So there's nothing here that changes that. When we got past grade bracing and making sure that the GPA was solid, the question was on the transcript and what is the role of the transcript to colleges. And the transcript is a report where the board certifies that the students have earned graduation credits. And it shows the history of the courses taken, the difficulty of the courses, and whether or not the student was awarded credit for that course. Our thinking in transcript, and in this district, our recommendation is to separate GPA, grades, calculation, and weighting from the transcript. So if you imagine in this policy, we've recommended just for the high school transcript, just for this year, a statement that says the board recognizes under the COVID pandemic, and we have implemented a policy of passing with distinction, pass, fail. That is how the board certifies that the student has met that graduation requirement and that the credit would move forward in graduation. The previous years would remain the same, and next year would also remain the same. It would be just for the 19-20 year. Now, I know the concern about colleges. We all want our students to be highly competitive. We want them to be recognized for their work. Their grades are always available, but on the transcript, what we're recommending is that we code it consistently, because it is a board policy about how you award credit and how students meet the graduation requirements.
I think that's very thoughtful, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I want to just amplify two things that you said. That grades are available, and that no one who has felt that they have been able to significantly achieve during this time is being penalized in any way. And I also want to sort of zoom out from a perspective standpoint a little bit and just remind people who are thinking about the college admissions process and thinking about their children being competitive in terms of that process moving forward, that 90% of kids in the world were not in school during this time physically, that to reassure everyone that policy committee and that you and staff in particular have looked to other districts to see what people are doing, that people are making generally consistent choices, and that in a global emergency, it's easy to look at a small thing that you'd like to be able to control and think about it and sort of give it an inflated sense of importance, but I think you have done such thoughtful work in making a policy that is genuinely fair to all of the students in our district and we have many, many different students and families and circumstances in our district.
Madam Chair, can I just expand on the issue of how grades are reported to colleges, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So when we received an advisement, every district in the state received an advisement from the State Department of Education, urging districts to adopt one of three options, which the State Department was recommending. One was no grading. In other words, just go with the grade that was standing before the shutdown for COVID-19. The second option was a pass-fail option, and the third option was pass-fail with distinction. The State Department did that after contacting every Connecticut institution of higher ed and a sampling of institutions of higher education nationally, as well as their respective organizations, right, and associations. The colleges expressed that they did not have confidence in the ability of 14,000 different school districts in the country that had been affected differently by the COVID-19 virus. They did not have confidence in the ability of those districts to differentiate letter grades under these circumstances. And so they said they would rather have a pass-fail or a pass-fail and distinction. In this case, the distinction would denote superior work. So that would be really the reward, so to speak, that several of the parents spoke about for a student that worked particularly hard went above and beyond, did excellent work during the, and exhibited excellent effort during the shutdown. So I just want to clarify that this does not in any way hurt a student in terms of college admission. In fact, this is what our colleges have asked for.
I think that makes a lot of sense too. And I also, Heidi, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you.
I also would say that while I think it's wonderful that there are some students who have been able to achieve very highly during this emergency, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's a global emergency. It's been very difficult for students and parents. And so I think focusing on doing what is required in order to get credit for having done the work is an achievement in and of itself in terms of getting credit for the class. And I think, I don't know, I think I'm really proud of all our students. Heidi, I'll throw to you. I see you too, Barbara. Heidi, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Just a quick comment or question for Brenda. I know there's been some concern also, if we can just digress a little bit as far as AP testing and then how that will affect scores or grading. Can you just elaborate on that?
So Heidi, what I think you're referring to is that this year the College Board went forward with AP testing online for the first time. And when students have had some difficulty submitting grades, and once they did that, they ended up losing their assessment data and were told they would need to retake it in June. And we immediately reached out to College Board. We're concerned about this. I mean, how disheartening after you've done this work. After 2 days of reporting these issues, they did make a change in the tests that were administered at the end of this week and beginning of this week, which are where a student who has that trouble, that there's a backup system to try to resubmit that. So they did put in kind of a safety valve going forward, but it doesn't help the students who took the AP assessment and then the data was not collected.
So is it possible, Brenda, to disseminate that information out to parents? Because I know that there's concern about that. And it's got to be frustrating for parents as well as students when that has happened.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
Barbara had a comment and then Erica also does too.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the administration and my colleagues on the policy committee for their hard work. I know they met 4 times over many hours to talk about this. And I'm going to steal a phrase from my colleague Sherelle, who talks about playing angel's advocate. So I guess the question I want to pose is, what is the reason not to offer students the option of a letter grade? We've heard from so many stakeholders for whom this is very important and they feel very strongly about it. Is there a reason not to do it that is so strong that we couldn't consider it?
Can I clarify? Isn't there the option to have the grade information if it's requested?
Yes. So we were saying all students' grades are recorded. Their GPA is available. It's on the transcript where I think, Barbara's bringing up the point and some parents are saying that instead of the board having a consistent policy where they have named it, I'll tell you the truth, Barbara, if you were to select the pass-fail option, by default, all you've selected is a grading policy. That's it. Because this is what the default of P becomes, right? P becomes a C or D, right? F is an F, and then there's A's and B's. It's not, so it's not a choice of let's choose, right? The pass-fail, pass with distinction policy is different than having students have their grade recorded. And I also, in a system such as Norwalk and with the range of students that we serve, putting the onus on a 9th grader to decide whether or not that grade they received should be a P or it should be a 78 or an 85, and who will help inform them about that process. It's another part of the equity of this, right? So it's really a choice between recording the grade earned, right, or the board acknowledging that credit has been awarded and letting the grading and the GPA be a separate process. So in this model, we separate the two.
I think that makes sense. And I will just suss out something that I think it sounds like you're saying to me. I see you, Barbara. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yep, you totally can. I just wanted to say that from an equity standpoint, it does make sense not to put the onus on students and families who don't have the ability to advocate for them rather than the other way around. Barbara, what were you going to say? And then Erica still has
My
something.
follow-up question for Brenda would be, so I hear you that there are families for whom this is too taxing a decision to make and communicate, but clearly there are families who are communicating loud and clear. Couldn't we just allow those families to opt in to a letter grade? I understand we want a standard policy for everyone, but I also am hearing the concerns of the community, and I just want to make sure that we really think that through in a way that everybody is satisfied with.
From what I understand, and Brenda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if a family wants to request a transcript with a letter grade for a purpose of some sort, that is available because the numerical grade exists. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's not the transcript document, which is actually the record of courses earned.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It would be consistent as a board policy that says the board under COVID used pass, fail, pass with distinction for awarding credit. I just want to make that. Any student can have their grade reports, right? And so the grades are available for students.
Got you. Okay.
And I think, to Dr. Adamowski's point, the last thing we want to appear to colleges is that we don't have a clear and consistent policy for what we're doing.
For sure. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So the grades exist. The grades are available. The credit awarding is separate from the specific grades, or you could think of it as pass, pass with distinction, and fail as just being a wider range of a grade in terms of
Sarah?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you finished?
I
I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay. I think Erica did have something to say too.
And Mike.
And I'm waiting.
And Mike's waiting too. Okay.
Brenda
Can
or
we go
Dr.
Erica?
Adamowski, I just want to make sure we check off all the concerns and public comments. And one of them was about students who are hopeful to attend a school outside the state of Connecticut. Can you just speak at a high level to your understanding of how those colleges will receive this policy?
Certainly. My understanding is that the State Department of Education, the commissioner had assigned one full-time staff member to this for a number of weeks. That not only were the colleges and universities in Connecticut all contacted, but that a sampling of colleges and universities nationally were done. And I believe they used for the sample schools that a large number of Connecticut students attended, or larger number of Connecticut students attended than others. There's also several national and regional associations of college and universities. And my understanding was that the State Department consulted with them as well. Their biggest concern is that they could not have any confidence in letter grades, given that the difference in technology, the difference in how long students were shut down in various places, and just the difference in conditions. And so I believe the State Department advisement of the three options that I discussed earlier was based on consultation with colleges and universities. I would like to just echo something that Brenda Myers said. I think the worst situation in terms of creating confusion and harming our students would be inherent in not having a consistent policy and allowing grades to go out in more than one manner.
Okay, Sherelle, you had a question too?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So first of all, I respect that, you know, everyone's spoken to the state, or the state has spoken to the colleges regarding, you know, what's best. So that's great, but I'm looking at younger children who may not be trying to get into college, and I'm just trying to get a clear understanding just for everyone. So if we are giving out grades, are we going with the grade that was there prior to COVID, or is that grade illustrative of what the students have been doing during COVID? So I'm a little bit confused.
So this is the concept of grade bracing. Brenda, could you go over that again, please?
And I just want to do that for parents and also to Barbara's point.
Yeah, no, this is very helpful because we've been focused so far on high school.
I mean, it's a great question, Sherelle. So again, when you think about what we tried to do in our grade bracing is we brace off of the assessment data that we trust the most, which was the data gathered in the first half of the year. So if I'm an 8th grader, I was in session for the first half of the year. And that creates, those two 10-week periods creates the semester, and it creates an average. So let's say my average was 86. Now I was in school, and then I was out for COVID. That was my third 10-week. Grades were issued, you know, based on that. And now I'm in my 4th 10 weeks. And so all 4 10 weeks get averaged for what's called the year-long average. So let's say I was at 86 mid-year. I've really been struggling terribly, and I've had difficulty completing some of my online work, and my average has dropped to an 82. I will be safe harmless at the midpoint because that midpoint was higher, and we will trust that data. Another student who was maybe 86 at mid-year and now is 94 and actually kind of found their stride and kind of liked working in this environment, they would receive their end of year grade, which is the 94. So we brace off of what we know, and then you can improve from there.
Okay, so I'm going to use the angel's advocate. So I guess I'm trying to think of consistency. So if we're doing one thing in one instance and another thing in another instant, you know, what's really valid?
I think Brenda, just if I can restate what I keep feeling like I'm hearing, it's just that a child can't do worse than they were doing.
Right, but what I'm saying is if, you know, just say I'm trying to get my child into, just say my child is going into 8th grade, and just say I want to get them into the Tufts program of veterinary school, and I need a grade. So if I can get a grade for my child and someone else can't, or I shouldn't say can't, doesn't. So I guess I'm just looking for some consistency. So yeah.
So Sherelle, everyone can get their grades in in Power School. They can see their students' grades and for every of the 10 quarters, and they can see their final grade.
Okay.
And one of the things that this does too is if a student was, even when in session, was struggling, maybe they had a 56, right? They weren't quite there yet. They still had this time to be able to move that grade into a passing grade. So anybody could continue to improve. If you had a 92 at midpoint, you could improve that to 93, 94, but that you would not, by the conditions of COVID, because what we know about grading for most students is they create a pretty replicable pattern, right? What we know about the first half doesn't change typically tremendously towards end, right? So we want to make sure that we use that data. So you're right, Sherelle. All kids have afforded the same opportunity, and the data is available to children and to their parents.
But that's good to know that the grade is actually in Power School. So even if the child gets a pass, fail, or you know, or pass with distinction, the grade itself, if for the parents who need it, is available in Power School. So that's really good to know.
Absolutely. And then Sherelle, do you feel like that answered all?
Of course.
Okay, awesome. Mike, you had a question as well? You're muted, Mike. Oh, now you're a blurry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I wanted to ask Brenda Myers, so teachers, and I think Sue Remsen has asked this question also. So teachers in Power School, they're doing, I mean, they're grading kids not on a pass-fail basis, but on a letter grade basis. So those grades are totally in Power School. So if a student is applying to a competitive college or colleges in California and they don't know what Connecticut's done, whatever it is, those grades do exist.
They do
Teachers
exist.
aren't giving pass-fail. I just want to confirm that that's the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah,
So
and I
they-
want to be, there's only one place where the pass, fail, and pass with distinction shows up. You print the college, the transcript that shows the courses, right? So it says algebra, right? And after algebra, it says 82, and it awards a credit in mathematics. Because remember, we're trying to meet our 26 credits. So if for this year, instead of saying 82 or B plus, it would say pass. And it would say at the bottom that during the COVID, that was the standard with the definition of pass, fail, and pass with distinction. But the grades are all housed. Students have been earning their grades and grade reports can be shared.
Can I also make a suggestion? Scott Hurwitz at McMahon sent out a really nice, concise explanation of what would be happening in terms of grading policy. And so I think it might make sense for us to just, if we can have just a bullet points, frequently asked questions, because we're getting a lot of the same questions.
And Sarah, that, obviously all the parents who we've heard from tonight were from Norwalk High School. I don't, maybe there was one parent from CGS, but there was not one parent from General Brian McMahon, I don't believe.
Yeah, we all
So
got.
obviously the communication has been different on Highland Avenue than it's been on County Street. And so maybe that information that was conveyed by Principal Hurwitz, something similar needs to be conveyed at Norwalk High School. And maybe that's part of the whatever the concerns we're hearing tonight.
And I think also, Brenda, because you were so specific in going through what's happening at elementary and middle and high school, it might make sense to do an elementary, a middle, and a high school, just if this is your,
Yeah, and I appreciate Scott's done a beautiful job sharing, and we have a guide, what we call a grading guideline document that has the details in it. And we will have, all principals will be sharing that information. So we've been sharing it with staff along the way. One of the things that's happened is we've really been hoping for policy approval, right? So you're trying to like bring two things along at the same time, and it's a bit of a short runway with school ending. So we appreciate everybody's help.
Can I just,
Can I just interject just quickly? Thank you, Brenda. Very thorough explanation. And I agree with you, Sarah, about Scott's and how he was able to disseminate that out and also just make it easy reading. And I think it's so important. It's powerful to have that information readily available, so there's less concern out there. I think the unknown and the questions can be really baffling and very difficult for parents. So I think if we can remain consistent on that, I think your suggestion is fabulous. I think that would be very, very important for our parents as well as our students. So thank you for that. And thank you, Brenda. You really went through item by item and really, and I know during policy committees, not everybody was present, obviously, but we really tried to delve into this layer by layer for all of those 4 meetings. And I think for Brenda to bring this to light for board members is really important. As well as for parents. And again, if we can reach out possibly, Brenda, to Reginald, so maybe he can have something similar that he could disseminate out to Norwalk High School parents as well. Thank you.
For sure. And so we actually have I know this was probably the most popular agenda item this evening in terms of people's interest and interest, concern. But we do actually have quite a lengthy agenda to get through. And so if, Mike, I see you have your finger up.
For the record, especially with Brenda with us here, I know last year we changed our policy with GPA and class rank. And that's not something that it's available kind of off the record, but it's not being publicized, and we're not ranking kids publicly, our high school students. But Brenda, I just want to confirm, I know we can give class rank, if a student's applying for a special scholarship or whatever, those numbers are calculated, which is obviously driven by their GPA. This policy isn't going to change that, and GPAs will still be available when requested. Is that
Correct.
the case?
Mike, that's a great point, because the board has a policy, and that is your graduation requirements. And there was quite a bit of language in there on GPA and class rank and those issues, right? And there is a separate one for P-TECH. This does not change any of that. The GPA and the cumulative GPA is always available and is part of the transcript, but class rank is issued only on special requests.
Thank you.
Sarah, I just have one thing, just very quickly. So I keep hearing, Brian McMahon did this, Norwalk High did not. So maybe when the principals or whoever's in charge of the principals has their meetings, they can discuss best practices, so that if one school is sending something out, the other one can too, so that we don't have to keep hearing this, they did this and this person didn't, because I'm sure that does not make the people at Norwalk High feel great.
For sure. I think that makes a lot of sense, Cheryl. Okay, if there's no further discussion on item 4, we can move on to item 5, which is an approval of the MOU with the NFEP bargaining unit due to closures related to COVID-19. May I have a motion? Heidi, may I have a second?
Second.
Sorry, Sarah, do we need to vote on the policy?
No, it was just a first read.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I thought that Dr. Adamowski said we had to vote so that they could grade.
It's not listed that way on the agenda.
No, we have, just to clarify, we need a consensus of the board tonight, because we have to implement this before you have your June meeting for your second read. So we will be implementing this as written, since you have not changed it tonight. We'll be implementing it as written for the grading, which everyone will be engaged in shortly.
Got it. I think that's a good idea. Okay. So we had a motion from Heidi. We had a second from Barbara. Is there any discussion about this MOU? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 I can't count, you guys. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Item 6, we have approval of the spring coaching stipends at 10% of their originally allocated amount. May I have a motion, Barbara?
Second.
I have a bunch of seconds. Is there any discussion? Does anyone want to say anything about that? Erica?
I would just like to thank all of the coaches for their work in advance of our spring season, and for those of you that did carry out work throughout the season. And I know that's all of the coaches, quite honestly. You have a tremendous impact on our students, and we hope that you accept this token of our appreciation. I wish we could do the entire thing, but the budget situation is what it is, and we're happy to at least extend you the 10%.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
I just wanted to add to that how deeply the board agonized about this, because we want, of course, everyone to be whole in their own personal budgeting. And the decision really was based on our needs for next year. And that is a student-based decision. So we hope that the adults in the equation understand and accept this with the goodwill that it's offered.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of approving the spring 10% of the spring coaching stipends? Aye.
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 I'm counting on my fingers. Any opposed? Okay. And no abstentions. That was all of us. Okay, unanimous as well. Item number 7 is the approval of the new Cranberry School proposed ed specs. I will take a second. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Motion, Barbara, thank you. Second. I need a second. Come on, somebody.
Second.
Erica?
If anyone else would like to talk about it besides me, that would be great, but I can also talk about it for a second. Anybody have anything to discuss about it?
I'm happy to
Go ahead.
speak as a member of the facilities committee while this all evolved, and as a former Cranberry parent. Cranberry had been promised an addition of a cafeteria and library as far back as 12 years ago, and it kept getting bumped for political and financial reasons during the recession and so forth. And then when we finally did the estimate, it turned out that the work to do that addition and to do the renovations that were needed were so costly that in the end it was more, it was wiser to invest in an entirely new school. And I think that the school community has come up with a really wonderful theme for their new building, which will let them communicate out. But I wholeheartedly support this school community receiving the building upgrades that they have been promised for over a decade, and that we can continue with the building program that is making Norwalk proud.
Agree. And I would also like to say that we did go through this fairly thoroughly in our facilities committee meetings twice. We had a special meeting to go over it again after we looked at the ed specs the first time. And we made alterations to the ed specs as they were initially presented, and we caught some things. And I feel good about the ed specs. And I also would like to clarify for the public in general, again, as I always do, that ed specs encompass a fairly narrow range of choice. And that square footage and that spacing and how it's used and things like that are very tightly regulated by the state in terms of what choices we can make. And also that those choices are tied to the reimbursement rate that we get for the project. And so it's really not an area in which we can make wild deviations from what is normative. So that's what I have to say about that. And I'm, of course, very excited to continue to improve the entire school district of Norwalk. Mike, you're commenting something, and I can't. Blair.
It's not, it's to a member, someone was asking me a question. That's what it's about. It's done.
Oh, sounds good. Okay, so if there is no further discussion, I will ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes unanimously also. Item 8, similarly, is the approval of the proposed Merrimack School cafeteria and kitchen alteration and addition ed specs. May I have a motion? Barbara, may I have a second? Heidi, thank you. Is there any discussion about this other than me? I will say also that we looked at this very thoroughly in facilities committee. And also, I didn't say this about the cranberry piece, but that we've been asking the question of environmental sustainability about every project that's been coming through facilities, and things like solar panels and energy efficiency and passive heat from windows and solar and things like that are very much on the radar of the people with whom we are working. So that's something to be aware of as well. Did anybody have any other discussion about Merrimack?
Sarah, just to double
Erica?
back and make sure we cover our basis on things that you're considering. From a COVID perspective, I know you guys talked about adding hand washing stations. There's a lot of conversation in the trades about also doing doorless bathrooms and automated sinks and toilets and antibacterial fabrics. So just so the public knows, those are things that the facilities committee is also taking into consideration, correct?
Absolutely. The specificity of the faucets, it's not a level of detail that we got down to in the ed specs, but we did talk about and provide for additional hand washing stations other than the ones that had initially been provided for. We increased the number of hand washing stations, and also in the cranberry situation, we discussed and changed, making sure that the entrance to the nurses area was separated as much as could be from pathways that went through other spaces and by other adults and things like that. So we are very much thinking about that COVID stuff.
Sarah?
Yo,
Sarah,
yes.
I did want to say one thing that seems to be lost here, is that, you know, for all these projects, school construction projects where we're getting state reimbursement, you know, they all do need to be the equivalent of LEED certified. So
Right,
they're
yes.
not LEED Gold because the cost of attaining that is insane. And if you go to Rogers Magnet School in Stanford, that was Gold LEED standard. And everybody there who's responsible for looking after that building complains about, you know, how crazy it is and the money that's wasted as a result. But effectively, every project we are building by definition has to meet LEED Silver. So this concept that we're building new schools that are not energy efficient, that are not taking advantage of passive energy and the light and the sun and so forth is completely ludicrous, because these projects are very environmentally sensitive at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning
Including the Bonus Ridge project. So this attitude, and I saw something written that we're ignoring all this stuff, is completely ridiculous. And so I want, for the record, to clarify that these buildings are all being built in an environmentally sensitive manner.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, LEED certification is the international standard of environmental responsibility in construction. So that's a thing to know. Okay, if there's no further discussion about the Narragansett cafeteria, all in favor? Boom.
Aye.
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 I think that's all of us. Any opposed? No. Okay, that passes unanimously as well. And then item 9 is approval of the ed specs for the oil tank removal and replacement projects. We have a number of, oh, thank you, Barbara. Motion.
Second, or
thank you, Cheryl. We have a bunch of oil tanks that have aged into needing to be replaced or removed at the same time. And it is something that needs to be done. And we are doing it to the standards of responsibility that we are required in a very serious and thoughtful way. If anyone else has anything to say about that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes unanimously as well. Okay, now we may move on to information and reports. Item A, April 2020 monthly financial reports. And Tom, I assume you are here somewhere.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good evening, board members. Yeah, so you have the April 2020 financial report. We are now 83% of the way through the fiscal year and 80% of the way through the school year. And we have expended at this point about 72% of the budget. That includes expending about 72.5% of the wage accounts. There are summer payments, as you probably, some of you may be aware. Many of our employees who are 10-month employees do elect to receive their payments over 12 months. So there, will be summer payments, which will bring that wage number up to closer to where we are at this point in the fiscal year. I do expect, and by and large, as you know, we have an executive order from the governor, as well as the provision of the CARES Act that does provide that we are required to continue to pay our employees. Of course, most of our employees have been doing, outstanding work since we shut down and are in distance learning. But in any event, we are required to continue to pay our employees. We do expect some wage savings in some of the areas, like the extra curricular accounts, some certified hourly accounts, and substitute accounts, and so on. So we do expect some modest savings in the wage accounts due to COVID-19. Benefits are pretty much right on budget. Health insurance is on budget. Retirement severance is an expense which we incur at the end of the year after we know exactly who is retiring. We obviously at this point have a pretty good list of who we think is retiring, and we do expect a little bit of savings in the retirement account, although there could be people who come through at the the end of the month, the end of June, and decide they're ready to retire, and then that could happen. So professional and technical services were about 60% expended there. The major accounts we have there are the special education 330 account, and we expect some very modest savings in that account. We also have some savings expected in the field trip account and a couple of other accounts, but by and large, professional services will be expended. The 400 series of accounts are property services. We're 76% expended. Most of these relate to the facilities department, and we expect that these accounts will be fully expended. The 500 series are other services. The two big items here are transportation and special education out-of-district tuition. Transportation, again, as we do expect to spend most of the money on transportation this year. There may be some modest savings, but it's not going to be too significant because the executive order does require that we continue to pay our transportation vendor. The tuition accounts, we do expect a little bit of savings in the tuition accounts, really mostly as a result of the move to bring students in-house and build in-house special education programs. So you're familiar with that phenomenon as well. Supplies and materials, at this point, we're 63% expended. And there may be some extra graduation requirements or extra graduation expenses, that would relate to the sort of the drive-in graduation that the superintendent described earlier this evening. But we are projecting there will be some savings in some of the supply accounts that will be sufficient to cover any areas where we do have some extra expenses there. And finally, in the equipment accounts, those are the 700 series of accounts. We're about 68% expended, and I think those accounts are likely to be fully expended by the end of the year. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Anybody?
I'm just wondering out loud, forgive me, but it's probably not possible on an individual level, but for like a district level, looking at the 600 series that includes things like oil and gas, with the price of oil and gas so low these days, is it possible to like buy futures in preparation for next winter?
Yes, and we do actually do that, and I'll get you an update on that because when I think it was actually a little bit, I think it was back in February as oil prices really were dropping worldwide. At that point, I had reached out to the district purchasing agent, and we work with the city of Norwalk and the purchasing agent for the city of Norwalk to sort of make these decisions jointly. And I believe at that point we did lock in an additional year on oil pricing, if I remember correctly. Now that was before the complete bottom fell out, so it's hard to know exactly when to time these things, but it was after we saw there was a big drop in December and January, and if I remember correctly, I think we moved forward to lock in next year's pricing at that point.
Great, thank you.
Okie doke. Anything else in the absence of Any other questions about that? Thank you so much, Tom. I think we can go to committee and representative reports. We can go, I'll go first. As the chair of facilities committee, we went through the ed specs of the Cranberry project and the Narragansett project, and we approved them to go to the full board, and we've just voted on them now. So that's my update as the facilities committee chair. Barbara, finance.
The finance committee has been active. We did last meeting was a line item examination of the transfers from accounts within different school student-based budgets, because we were concerned about savings to be able to be rolled over. We are informed that we can hope for $1.5 million in savings from fiscal year 1920 that we hopefully will be allowed by the city to roll over, which will allow us to continue the ELL programming that we established this past fall that helped us meet the increased demand. So that obviously still needs to be, go through processes, but we are hopeful that we will be able to do that and alleviate further cuts. We also discussed with the finance committee and staff the hope that the SGCs would submit to each to the recommendations that they make an alternative to the superintendent's suggested budget cuts. And we have started to sort of get a verbal feedback that many of those budgets are being settled, and those decisions are being made in a way that the school communities are pleased with, or at least not unhappy with. And so we have asked that each school SGC submit, along with their school improvement plan, a copy of their recommendations and their rationale for it. And that way, as we go into the June business meeting and finalizing voting on the budget, the board is aware of their recommendations and can accept them, hopefully.
Okay. Sherelle, do you have a curriculum committee update? Sherelle? Okay. Sherelle will come back to you.
I am so sorry. I keep forgetting. I'm just talking away here. I was hoping Barbara would speak a little longer. I was pulling up the agenda for the for our next curriculum meeting. Off the top, I just know we will discuss Fox Run and the plans for Fox Run at the next meeting. I won't prolong my report because Brenda has done a wonderful job of giving the updates that people are truly interested in. So, so that's it for me, unless anyone has any specific questions.
I think that may be the first time any board member has wanted me to talk more.
I was trying to pull up the email, and I have so many windows open. It's like, oh my gosh, just so I can give specifics. So if someone else wants to go on, I can pull up the specifics, but I know that we definitely will be talking about Fox Run at our next meeting, which is on, let's see.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's the 26th.
Yeah.
So, yep. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yep.
Heidi, do you want to give a quick policy update? I know a lot of it was what we spoke about this evening.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, we spent the past couple of weeks discussing emergency closure due to COVID-19. So we've spent a lot of our time, pretty much the last 4 meetings, discussing that. So I'll be meeting with Frank shortly, and we'll be discussing what will be next on our policy committee. So I don't want to delve in any further because I know we've spent a good chunk tonight discussing the policy.
Thank you, Heidi. And Erica, did you want to give an ad hoc SPED update?
Sure. So tonight we had our ad hoc SPED meeting, and we went through ESY plans. We had a welcome and a Q&A session with Dr. Estrella, and we had questions in both English and Spanish. So I encourage everybody to watch the YouTube playback of that. We also had a playback of the results of the Department of Specialized Learning parent survey and an update from the NSPED PAC, who also met on Monday. So I won't dive into each one of those agenda items, but it was a very robust session. And again, I encourage everybody to watch it on YouTube. From a liaison perspective, I'll just throw that in here as well. I am the athletics liaison, and again, we talked a little bit about how hard our coaches are working. I'll just build on that by saying both McMahon and Norwalk High coaches are participating in food drives. Meals for McMahon has raised over $13,000. Norwalk High is also having a virtual food drive that supports person to person, and both schools are doing senior signing days and senior recognition awards for spring programs. So thank you again to our coaches.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erica. Okay. Are there any other committees? No, that's all of them, right?
Can we do liaison?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I just wanted to update that CES has been developing programming for professional development and support for teachers who are undergoing, a PTSD-like experience from this situation. And that is something that our staff could consider taking advantage of. And I want to acknowledge the PTOC, who, in addition to their food drive when we first shut down in March, have organized themselves to deliver meals to families who don't have transportation. So they're picking the meals up at the schools and delivering them to homes. So I think that's heroic and very kind of them. And I also just wanted to acknowledge the Norwalk Education Foundation. We were not able to have our Excellence in Education dinner this year, but the way that they always celebrate our educators is heartwarming and definitely a tradition we need to continue. I know that many people have seen the wonderful videos that have highlighted each of these individuals and the contributions they're making in our regular climate, but especially so now in this changed environment. So I just want to shout out to them.
Thanks, Barbara. Sherelle, did you have, is there any early childhood liaison update or no?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm unmuted. So actually, you guys have to forgive me. Sometimes I just do and I forget to write down what I do. We just do it. So we did invite Dr. Estrella to attend virtually one of those meetings as well. So I put her in touch with Jamie Zyla, and so they will work out a time for her to attend a meeting with providers, just so she can, know what's going on with our youngest constituents. And I did find the agenda for April 26th meeting. So Brenda, you can correct me if I miss anything, but I have that we'll go over the gifted and talented. There'll be an update, the digital literacy and computer science update, the EL follow-up, and of course the Fox Run Elementary School Impact Plan. And I think there's a Quad D lab school. Brenda, I don't know if you're still there.
Yes, but we have an update from Merrimack on our lab school.
Okay,
great.
Awesome.
Awesome, thank you, Sherelle.
And the early child, they've really been, trying to figure out, the best ways to get the service to the younger constituents. So I really, and those meetings, I really love them because they're so pragmatic. And so, and they care and they just get to the point. And so I just want to give a shout out to the Early Childhood Council.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Do any board members have any announcements? Any announcements, anybody? If nobody has any announcements, I have an announcement, which is that I have been doing a jazz brunch virtually. I've been performing jazz at a brunch every Sunday since we've been in lockdown. And so far have been able to raise almost $600 for local charities, which I'm very happy about, including Malta House and Open Door Shelter. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in any jazz at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, I've been playing on Facebook Live and on Instagram Live, and I would welcome you. And donations are welcomed, but absolutely not obligatory. But it's been nice to feel like we've been having some community goodness spreading. I lost my words there. I apologize. Okay. If new board members have any more announcements, we have the approval of minutes from April 16th and April 23rd. Does anyone, I need a motion for approval, and then we need to do the corrections. So motion for approval. Motion Heidi, second Barbara. Any corrections to the April 16th minutes? No. Wow.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd, 2020? Heidi, second Barbara. Any corrections? What? Lightning struck twice. Okay. All in favor?
I had to say,
Oh.
Barbara didn't have any corrections in the ad hoc sped committee meeting. So lightning has struck 3 times.
Lightning is striking. That's excellent. I'm very pleased. I'm happy that we're having such great minutes this time.
Laura's my favorite.
She's great. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Oh, wonderful. Okay, all in favor of approving Laura's wonderful minutes? Aye.
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 Excellent. Okay. And now we need to go into an executive session. And actually what we're going to do is go into a separate Zoom meeting, because this one is not secure because it's been open to members of the public. So Ralph, I don't know how you want to handle that. What do you want to do there?
I think we're going to end the live stream right now, and I'll let you guys go to executive session. I don't think there's a need for coming back. There's no way to come back for an adjournment. So I think that would just end the
Okay.
meeting.
So Laura, what we'll do is I will just email you the time that we adjourned. Laura, are you still there? I'll email Laura the time that we adjourned. But Ralph, did you send us the link to the other meeting in email?
Yes, and I'll make sure that you guys get set up. So I'll log on as well right now. So.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Laura. So I'll email you the adjournment time when we're out of exec session. Okay, see may I have a motion to go into executive session? May I have a second? Boom, boom, all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Tell
Okay.
Laura who it is.
See you guys over there.
Good night.